While Nintendo is mostly known for cute, family-friendly games people of all ages can enjoy, there's a surprising amount of dark, creepy, and just straight-up unsettling things hidden throughout some of their most iconic games. From disturbing secret boss battles like Ocarina of Time's Dead Hand and Giygas from Earthbound, to blink and you miss it disturbing scenes like Luigi's hanging in Luigi's Mansion and the ghosts of Fatal Frame, today we'll be going over the absolute creepiest things hidden in Nintendo games. I've compiled all the entries into an Iceberg format, with each tier getting progressively creepier and more disturbing as we go along, so be sure to stay to the end if you want to see the really freaky ones. Now without further ado, let's get straight into Tier 1. Donkey Kong 64 Creepy Castle. Donkey Kong 64 is a 3D platformer released for the Nintendo 64, where players took control of Donkey Kong and his crew to explore themed worlds, collect bananas, and battle cartoonish enemies. Most of the game sticks to this bright, jungle-inspired environment and wacky energy, but then you reach Creepy Castle. This level is a complete tonal shift. You're dropped into a thunderstorm-lit castle surrounded by gothic architecture, crypts, eerie ambient noises, and music that sounds like it belongs in a horror game. The area is filled with coffins, ghosts, and a heavy atmosphere that feels out of place in an otherwise goofy adventure. What makes it pretty memorable is how it catches you completely off guard. The usual upbeat tone disappears and is replaced by something much darker and more isolated. Plus, the get out sound effect that blares in your ear when you pick up a banana really freaks you out once you get to this part of the game. Get out! There's no jump scare or anything truly crazy, just an unsettling vibe and dissonant soundtrack, which is why it made it to Tier 1 on this list. Animal Crossing's New Horizons Haunted Paintings. Animal Crossing's New Horizons is the iconic and ever-cute life simulation game on the Nintendo Switch where you customize your island, interact with villagers, and collect furniture, bugs, and art. It's relaxing and wholesome by design. But the game has a subtle and weird supernatural twist that sneaks up on you if you're not paying attention. When you purchase art from Red, the island's sketchy art dealer who operates out of a sketchier boat, there's a chance of getting a counterfeit version of famous paintings. Some of those fakes are haunted, which is honestly a pretty cool Easter egg that I never knew about, despite putting in like 100 hours in Animal Crossing's New Horizons. At night, they might blink, shift their posture, smile, or even float slightly off the ground. There's no warning or music or anything, it just kind of happens. These moments are quiet and low-key, but they create a weird unease in your house and in a game where you're used to absolute comfort and cozy vibes. It's especially creepy when you walk past a painting you thought was normal or wasn't a fake, only to see it moving. It's a mild scare, sure, but creepy enough to warrant on this list in Tier 1, thanks to the contrast it creates in such a usually peaceful and cute setting. There's nothing terrifying here, but just enough to give you a pause. Animal Crossing TV Aliens. The original Animal Crossing game on the GameCube started it all. It was the original laid-back town simulator where you live among animal villagers, decorate your home, and experience events in real time. Everything in the game feels soft and safe, until you turn on the TV at 3:33 a.m. If you do this on a Saturday night, you'll get an alien broadcast. The screen cuts to static, a low-res alien face appears, and it starts speaking in a garbled voice over strange ambient noise. There's no context, no lore, no clear reason why it's there. And that's it. No explanation, no story connection, just pure weirdness. It only plays once a week, and most players found it by accident, which made it feel like you stumbled onto a dark secret you weren't meant to see. In a game built around daily routines and harmless fun, this alien moment completely breaks the tone and leaves you wondering, what's going on? And since the game uses real-world time, you can only see this at 3:33 in the morning, assuming you're not time traveling, which somehow makes it even creepier. It's weird, unexpected, and eerie, but since it's not actively threatening or really disturbing like some of the later entries on this list, it comfortably sits in Tier 1. Majora's Mask: The Gibdo Father. Majora's Mask is an action-adventure game for the Nintendo 64 known for its darker tone compared to other Zelda games, its twisted characters, and heavy themes about time and loss. Old Zelda games tend to get surprisingly creepy at times, so don't be surprised to see this game pop up later in the Iceberg. Set in the doomed world of Termina, you only have 3 in-game days to stop the moon from crashing down. That's already pretty dark in and of itself, but the Gibdo Father side quest takes things a step further. In Akana Canyon, you meet a girl named Pamela who's standing outside her locked house, acting anxious and protective. When you finally make your way inside, you find her father, wrapped in Gibdo bandages and groaning like a monster, slowly turning into a zombie. It's clear that she's trying to protect him and hide him from what's happening, but when you play the Song of Healing, he transforms back into a human and collapses into her arm. It's brief but an emotional scene. The whole sequence hits heavy themes of sickness, decay, and denial, and while it ends on a hopeful note, the sudden reveal of a monster in what looks like a normal home paired with those old-school Nintendo 64 graphics makes it weirdly disturbing. It's easily one of the more haunting moments in the game, but it lands in Tier 1 because of its powerful yet relatively grounded scare compared to what's coming. Link's Awakening Ending Dream Twist. Spoilers for Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening if you haven't played it yet. Link's Awakening is a top-down Zelda game that originally came out on the Game Boy and was later remade for the Switch with a toy-like art style. It takes place on the mysterious island of Koholint, where Link washes ashore after a shipwreck and begins a new quest to collect magical instruments and wake the windfish. The vibe is light, a little goofy, and almost surreal at times. But then the ending hits. Throughout the game, little clues start to pop up that something isn't quite right. People reference dreams, things feel slightly too perfect, and some characters seem to know more than they let on. Eventually, you learn the truth. Koholint Island isn't real. It's all part of the windfish's dream, and when you wake up, everything and everyone disappears. Every side character, every quest, every location, gone. The ending shows Link alone in the ocean as the music fades out. It's not scary in the traditional sense, but it's undeniably eerie. There's a loneliness and sadness that sticks with you, especially after you've grown attached to the world. It's a quiet kind of unsettling, more sad than horrifying, but the existential twist is just creepy enough to earn a spot in Tier 1. And it kind of reminds me of the ending of Shutter Island for those of you who've seen the movie. Moving on to Tier 2. Pokémon Sword and Shield Balanlia Ghost Letter. Pokémon Sword and Shield, released on the Nintendo Switch, brought players to the Galar region, a UK-inspired land filled with colorful towns, Dynamax battles, and new Pokémon to catch. For the most part, the tone is lighthearted and cheerful, as most Pokémon games go. But one side quest especially, tucked away in the small, misty town of Balanlia, takes a turn into unexpectedly eerie territory. In Balanlia, you can meet a girl named Paula, who asks you to deliver a letter to someone named Frank in another town. When you finally track him down, Frank turns out to be an old man who says he had a childhood friend named Paula, but she passed away a long time ago. There's no music cue, no dramatic cutscene, just the slow realization that the girl you were talking to and who gave you the letter was a ghost. And that's it. The game moves on without acknowledging it any further. The simplicity of the moment makes it even creepier. There's no resolution or closure, just the haunting implication that ghosts exist in the Pokemon world. And they might be handing you mail. It's definitely a step up in creep factor compared to Tier 1 because it plays with death directly and doesn't feel like a joke or Easter egg. Earthbound Cultists. Earthbound is a surreal RPG for the Super Nintendo where you play as Ness, a psychic-powered kid fighting cosmic threats and bizarre enemies. While it has a quirky tone overall, it has a tendency to swerve into deeply unsettling territory when you least expect it. The cult encounter in the town of Happy Happy Village is one of those moments. When you arrive in the town, you find that it's been taken over by a strange group of people dressed in blue robes with big, cartoonish smiles painted on their faces. They call themselves Happy Happiest, and their goal is to paint the entire world blue, which is kind of ironic since blue usually refers to sadness. What starts off as ridiculous quickly becomes disturbing. The town is completely under their control, and their leader, Mr. Carpainter, is clearly unhinged. There's even a locked-up girl being held as a prisoner for use in the rituals. The whole setup feels uncomfortably close to real-life cult behavior, only stylized in a way that makes it even more surreal. The fact that Earthbound doesn't flinch from presenting the scenario with such weird sincerity gives it a disturbing vibe. And believe me, the Earthbound series gets way more disturbing than this. Just wait for Tier 5. But for now, the Cultists of Earthbound earns a respectable spot in Tier 2 for turning something absurd into something genuinely kind of creepy. Animal Crossing Wild World NPCs. Animal Crossing Wild World on the Nintendo DS continued the series' tradition of cute animal neighbors, fishing tournaments, and laid-back daily life. But it also added one of the eeriest, most overlooked mechanics in the entire franchise. The villagers talking about you when you're not playing. If you haven't checked in for a while, villagers might mention your absence when you return. That's a common recurring feature in many Animal Crossing games. But in Wild World specifically, things get weirder when your friends visit your town. Villagers will comment to them about things you did, how long you've been gone, and even say unsettling things like, "I wonder where player disappeared to." Or, "It's like they vanished into thin air." It almost feels like the game's alive and watching. And while it's technically just a program social feature, it kinda hits in a weird, uncanny way. It blurs the line between game world and reality, especially when you return and they act strangely aware of your absence. It's not full-on horror, but it's got that subtle, unsettling vibe to it that makes it just a little freaky. Majora's Mask's Moonface. As mentioned back in Tier 1 with the Gibdo Father quest, Majora's Mask is easily one of the darkest games in the Zelda series. The whole game revolves around an apocalyptic countdown, where you have just 3 days to stop the moon from crashing into the land of Termina. And that moon, yeah, it has a face. Not just any face, a massive, angry, horrifying face with bulging eyes and a menacing grin. It stares down at you for the entire game, getting closer and closer with every passing hour. The first time you look up and see it, you don't really know what you're looking at. But then you realize, this thing is watching you. The constant presence of that looming, furious face makes the entire game feel more tense. It adds a level of pressure and dread that few other games manage to pull off. And if you let the 3 days run out, you get a cutscene where the moon slams into the earth, destroying everything. It's kind of nightmare fuel, made worse by how bizarre and animated the moon looks. By this point, that moon face has become iconic, and while it's not as disturbing as later Zelda entries will be, it's creepy enough to warrant a spot in Tier 2. Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire Ghost Girl. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are enhanced remakes of the original Gen 3 games for the Nintendo 3DS. And while most of the experience sticks to the typical Pokemon fare, there's one ghostly moment hidden in plain sight that still creeps people out. It happens during your battle with Phoebe of the Elite Four, who specializes in ghost-type Pokemon. Right before the fight begins, the camera pans dramatically through the room. But for a few brief frames, just 5 to be exact, you can clearly see a ghostly girl in a white dress standing behind Phoebe's chair. She's holding what looks like a doll and disappears almost as quickly as she appears. It's so fast that most players never even notice on their first playthrough. But it gets weirder. As the camera finishes panning and fades back in, the perspective slightly changes. It's as if you're suddenly seeing from the ghost girl's point of view, walking towards the player. The game never addresses her, and you'll never see her again. There's no dialogue, no lore, no payoff. It's just there. A subtle, creepy, one-off moment that's super easy to miss, and people often have to record their screen and go frame by frame to see it. Animal Crossing Gyroid Face Glitch. Gyroids are this bizarre furniture-like creature that have been a staple in the Animal Crossing series since the beginning. They look like little terracotta statues with flailing arms, and they twitch and pulse to strange music and rhythmic patterns. Most players think of them as a cute or weird collectible. But then there's the Gyroid Face. Occasionally in the original Animal Crossing, if you reset the game or the power went off without saving, you got yelled at by Mr. Rossetti, the infamous mole who lectures players for bad save behavior. But in rare cases, instead of getting Rossetti, your character's face gets replaced with a blank, emotionless gyroid mask. No explanation, no dialogue, just you walking around as a silent, unsettling, ghostly-looking version of yourself. The game corrects itself after another reset, but the moment itself is creepy as hell. It's not just a punishment, it's like the game is erasing your identity and replacing it with something horrifying. Even though this is an unintentional glitch, it definitely crosses the line into uncanny horror that's subtle but surprisingly effective. Moving on to Tier 3. Luigi's Mansion L. Luigi's Mansion, released for the GameCube, is a spooky but lighthearted ghost hunting game where Luigi explores a haunted mansion to rescue Mario. It's full of cartoonish ghosts, slapstick moments, and a fun horror vibe that never gets too serious. But then there's L. This entry refers to a mysterious glitch or placeholder text that appears in the game's code, often labeled as L. Some fans believe it may have been linked to an early, unused ghost character, or even a scrapped file that never made it into the final release. What's unsettling is how little info we have about it, and unlike most glitches, this one doesn't behave predictably. It's often associated with rooms that freeze, eerie audio bugs, or unused assets loading incorrectly. Players have reported finding themselves locked in pitch-blank rooms, hearing distorted laughter with no source. Whether it's a bug or the remnant of some removed content, L feels like you're brushing up against something the developers didn't want you to see. It feels truly haunting compared to the rest of the lighthearted ghosts in the game. It's that kind of creepy that comes from the unknown, and the creepy urban legends around it push it to a spot in Tier 3. Pokémon XY Lumiose City Ghost Girl. Pokémon X and Y brought the franchise to the Nintendo 3DS with the full 3D graphics and a new region called Kalos. Most of the game is bright, friendly, and full of energy, but there's one moment in Lumiose City that still freaks players out to this day. And let me tell you, this one's way creepier than the previous Pokémon Ghost entry. When you enter a specific building and take the elevator to the second floor, a ghostly girl appears behind your character. The screen flashes and freezes, your character stops moving as the girl floats towards you. She doesn't walk, she has no walking animation, she glides. The lights flicker, and she quietly says, "No, you're not the one," before vanishing without a trace. There's no explanation for who she is or what she's looking for. You just go up to this floor and it just happens. There's no follow-up later in the game. She just shows up, making her cryptic statement, and disappears forever. It's such a sudden and out-of-place moment that feels like something slipped in from a completely different game. And it's also way more chilling due to the unsettling presentation. This one interrupts your movement and camera control completely, and everything goes creepily silent. All the music cuts out, and the silence is just deafening. It makes it feel like the game itself is reacting to her. Easily tier 3 material. Super Mario Sunshine, pollution ghosts, and unused textures. Super Mario Sunshine is one of the brighter, more colorful entries in the franchise. Set on the tropical Isle Delfino, where Mario is cleaning up the island with a water-powered jetpack. Despite the sunny atmosphere and the great island music, it's got some of the strangest, creepiest moments in any Mario game. Case in point, the pollution ghosts. In certain areas, like Hotel Delfino, you might see strange, shadowy figures running just under the surface of the goop. They have vague humanoid shapes and seem to mimic Mario's movements. They can't hurt you, and you can't interact with them, they just exist, watching. Sometimes multiple appear at once, sliding in and out of view. No clear explanation is ever given in-game, and their appearance is never addressed by the characters or story. There's also these unused pollution textures that are pretty creepy as well if you can dig them up. For a game that's so cheerful and bouncy, the sudden appearance of these shadow people under toxic slime is incredibly unsettling. They're not ghosts in the literal sense, but they feel like echoes of something corrupted. Metroid Fusion SAX Encounters. Kicking it up a notch with this entry, Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance is a sci-fi action-adventure where the game lets you play as Samus, exploring a space station infected by parasitic life forms called X. Early in the game, Samus is infected and cured, but a copy of her, called SAX, is created by the parasite, and it's hunting you. SAX is an emotionless, powerful version of Samus in full power suit. Throughout the game, it stalks you through dark corridors. And the worst part is you can't even fight it. When SAX shows up, your only option is to hide and pray it doesn't see you. If it does, it chases you down and kills you almost instantly. The game doesn't give you much warning either. You just start hearing chunks of boots echoing from off-screen or the sound of a nearby door opening. It's pure dread, and it's like you're constantly having to be on watch as something is hunting you down. Every encounter feels like something out of a horror game. Again, it's not just the gameplay threat, it's the psychological threat of just knowing something is always around the corner. The anxiety of knowing a stronger version of yourself is lurking nearby, hunting you, is enough to put this deep into tier 3. Pokémon Diamond Pearl, Old Chateau Ghosts. Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, released for the Nintendo DS, introduced the Sinnoh region and are remembered for their myth-heavy story and darker themes. One of the creepiest parts of the game is the Old Chateau, a haunted mansion tucked away in Eterna Forest. The building is abandoned, dark, and full of eerie music. You might encounter the ghosts of a butler and a little girl who silently floats across rooms. They don't interact with you and can't be battled. They simply appear and vanish without explanation. Some players also reported seeing a ghostly figure in the windows. Again, the game never acknowledges them. There's also a TV in one room that, if interacted with, triggers an encounter with the ghost-type Pokemon Rotom. But Rotom aside, the fact that this area includes multiple human ghosts with no lore backstory makes it one of the more legitimately freaky Pokemon locations. I don't know what's with the Pokemon games and having so many ghost encounters, but hey, they easily make for creepy, unsettling jump scares. While it's not like insanely creepy material, it's way more disturbing than the subtle ghost encounters in earlier Pokemon games we've already covered. Super Mario 64 Mad Piano. Super Mario 64 is one of the most beloved foundational 3D platformers of all time. It introduced players to Peach's Castle, the wide-open 3D levels, and a new way of controlling Mario. But the game isn't without its moments of creepy terror, mainly the infamous Mad Piano. In Big Boo's Haunt, a haunted mansion level already full of spooky vibes, there's a room with a grand piano sitting quietly in the corner. If you walk too close to it, the piano suddenly springs to life, slamming its lid open and closing it violently as it chases you around the room. It moves fast and makes horrifying screeching noises with each step. You can't kill it or stop it in any way, it just barrels after you like a possessed object from a horror movie. There's no real reason for it to exist, like it doesn't drop a star or provide anything useful, it's just there waiting for you, waiting to terrify unsuspecting players. It's not really a ghost or existential, unsettling, creepy feeling like some of the other entries. This one's more of just like a classic jump scare that you're not expecting, freaking you out as you run trying not to die. Even decades later, players still remember how badly it freaked them out as kids. It's simple, but pretty effective. Mother 3 Creepy Mailbox. Mother 3 is the sequel to Earthbound, released only in Japan for the Game Boy Advance. It's a strange, emotional, and incredibly dark RPG that explores grief, loss, and the cost of technological progress. And at certain points, it gets outright disturbing. There's a scene late in the game where you enter this desolate, corrupted city filled with bizarre, almost dreamlike architecture. Scattered throughout are mailboxes that you can interact with, and when you do, they don't show you letters, they show you visions. Horrible ones. You'll read things like, "There's something inside, but you don't want to look. It's too terrible." Another says, "The mailbox is screaming. It won't stop." It's completely unexpected and never explained. Just these horrifying glimpses into something way darker than the rest of the game had prepared you for. It's abstract, but it sticks with you in that unsettling, existential way. The sheer emotional weirdness of it all makes it one of the more unsettling encounters in the game, and firmly earns its place in Tier 3. Moving on to Tier 4. Super Mario Galaxy 2 Hell Valley Sky Trees. Super Mario Galaxy 2 on the Nintendo Wii is one of the most visually beautiful and imaginative Mario games ever made. You travel through galaxies, hop across planets, and collect stars while accompanied by whimsical music and bright visuals. But if you look closely enough, there's something lurking in the background of one of the levels, and it's not supposed to be there. In Shiverburn Galaxy, if you angle the camera right towards the cliff in the background, you'll notice a group of tall, shadowy figures standing completely still, watching your every move. They themselves don't move, they don't blink, they just stand there and stare, watching you. Data miners later discovered these models in the game's files under the chilling name Hell Valley Skytree. They're vaguely humanoid with long limbs and heads that seem too large for their bodies. The game never references them, they're just there watching you the entire level. Their presence doesn't affect gameplay at all, but they change the entire vibe of the level once you know that they're just creepily watching you as you play. Legend of Zelda Redeads. The Legend of Zelda has plenty of creepy moments across many entries. But one enemy that shows up again and again, scaring players across generations, are the Redeads. These enemies first appeared in Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, and have returned in multiple Zelda games since, each time managing to be terrifying in their own way. They're tall, hunched, zombie-like creatures that let out a high-pitched scream when they see you. The scream freezes you in place as they slowly approach, and then when they get close enough, they latch onto Link and gnaw at him while he flails helplessly. It's an awful animation and straight out of like The Last of Us or something. It's nothing you'd expect out of a Zelda game. No matter how many times you encounter them, the paralyzing shriek never stops being creepy. Later games update their design, but that scream is eternal. They tend to hang out in tombs or crypts, making their appearances even worse because you're already on edge. They've been in the franchise for decades, and somehow they still manage to hit harder than many modern horror games. Super Mario 3D Land Ghost Lady. Super Mario 3D Land for the Nintendo 3DS is a bright, upbeat platformer filled with colorful environments, tight gameplay, and familiar Mario mechanics. It's not the kind of game where you'd expect a creepy, ghostly encounter. But at the end of World 4-4, that's exactly what you get. After defeating the level's boss and heading towards the exit flagpole, you can spot a strange figure watching you in the background if you wait. It's a pale woman in a long dress with long black hair. Definitely not a typical Mario character. As you get closer, she slowly fades away. No music change, no explanation, or no acknowledgement from the game whatsoever. She doesn't appear anywhere else, and most players didn't even notice her on the first run, as you have to sit there and wait a while before getting the flag. Her design is way more ghostly and human-like than anything else in the game, and the fact that it appears during a normal level, right when you think you're safe, makes it even more unsettling. It's never really explained if she's a ghost, a leftover asset, or an intentional scare, but the fact that Nintendo puts something this eerie into such an innocent-feeling game is enough to land it comfortably in Tier 4. Zelda Twilight Princess Shadow Beasts. Twilight Princess is one of the darkest games in the Legend of Zelda franchise, both visually and tonally. You play as Link traversing between the normal world and the Twilight Realm, a shadowy, corrupted version of Hyrule. And within that realm, you encounter the Shadow Beasts. These monsters are tall, inky black creatures with twisted limbs and glowing masks. When they show up, the music cuts out. The game locks you into an arena with them, and the screen pulses with darkness as they screech in this strange, echoing voice. They don't attack you immediately either. They linger, circling you slowly almost like a shark, as if they're toying with you. If you leave one alive for too long, it lets out this blood-curdling scream that revives the others. It kind of reminds me of that Aztec death whistle, if you've seen that. Their design is unnerving, but their behavior is what really makes them disturbing. They seem aware, like they're not just coded enemies, but actively hunting you. It's one of the more unsettling enemy encounters in the Zelda series, period. And it's a big reason for why Twilight Princess feels so much darker than its predecessors. Definitely one of the creepier things found in Zelda games. Majora's Mask Elegy of Emptiness. Majora's Mask strikes again, and this time it's an iconic one. This time, it's not just a side quest or an apocalyptic moon, it's Elegy of Emptiness, one of the most cursed songs in Zelda history. It's used to create statue copies of Link in different transformation forms to solve puzzles. Sounds harmless, right? Until you actually see them. When you play the song, it creates a statue that looks like a dead-eyed, soulless version of your current form, almost like the Annabelle doll of the Zelda world. The human Link statue, in particular, is nightmare fuel. The blank eyes, mouth frozen in a wide, weird grimace, completely still. And since you need to use it often for puzzles, it follows you throughout the game. The design is so unsettling that it became the inspiration for the infamous Ben Drowned creepypasta, which only made it more cursed due to the internet lore. Even outside of the creepypasta context, the statues are disturbing. They look like corpses, lifeless shells of Link just staring back at you, almost like it's haunted. It's the perfect blend of in-game mechanic and psychological horror, which makes it right up there for Tier 4. Moving on to Tier 5. GameBoy Camera Run. Game Boy camera was released in 1998 as a weird, ahead-of-its-time accessory that let players take and edit grainy black and white photos. Most of its features were goofy. There were minigames, stamps, and face editing tools that let you turn your friends into pixelated nightmares. But it also had one of the most terrifying Easter eggs in any Nintendo product ever. If you tried to access a menu that wasn't available or triggered certain errors, the camera would sometimes flash into a distorted face screen with the word "Run" in bold letters beneath it. The faces were uncanny, unsettling, distorted, and paired with unexpected jump scare sound effects. This wasn't part of any game or spooky feature, it was literally integrated into the interface of the camera itself. Even more unsettling was that some versions featured different random faces, some with exaggerated features or distorted expressions that felt just a little too human. Keep in mind, this wasn't a video game. This was the camera feature, so you were not expecting some jump scare Easter egg like this. Given that this was marketed toward children and appeared without warning, it caused a lot of lasting childhood trauma. It's a perfect example of uncanny horror in a place you would never expect. And the sheer fact that this came from an official Nintendo product, not a creepypasta, mod, or hell, even a Nintendo game, puts it squarely in Tier 5. Ocarina of Time, Bottom of the Well, and Dead Hand. Ocarina of Time is one of Nintendo's most iconic games, one we've covered multiple times already throughout this video. A heroic fantasy epic where you explore dungeons, wield the iconic Master Sword, and save Hyrule. But buried under all that wonder is the bottom of the well, which might have well been lifted from a survival horror game. The moment you enter this unseemingly normal well, you're surrounded by walls of blood, torture device-like props, and invisible floors that drop you into pits. The whole place is soaked in an eerie green fog, and the music is a low, ambient hum that doesn't sound like it belongs in a Zelda game. There seems to be a ton of dead hands sticking up from the ground, and then you meet Dead Hand. It's a pale, grotesque, fleshy monstrosity with a sagging head and a long neck, surrounded by multiple detached hands that sprout from the ground and try to grab you. Once you're stuck, the creature lurches towards you, mouth gaping open to bite your face off. The animation is deliberately slow and uncomfortable, and the worst part is how little context the game gives you. It doesn't explain what Dead Hand even is or why it exists. It just sits down in that well, waiting for its next victim. Their disturbing imagery, especially the old graphics, creepy mechanics, and pure psychological horror of this dungeon easily push it into Tier 5. Earthbound Giygas final boss fight. Earthbound is often remembered for its quirky charm, humorous writing, and lovable cast. But the charm takes a sharp turn towards the final battle, where you confront Giygas, the alien entity behind the game's events. And what follows is one of the most disturbing and existential, unsettling boss battles in video game history. When the fight begins, the screen distorts and pulses with red, swirling imagery. Giygas himself doesn't have a defined form. He's kind of like a Lovecraftian, disembodied alien face entity screaming in pain or madness. His dialogue is broken, seemingly random, and deeply unsettling. Lines like, "It hurts," or "You cannot grasp the true form of Giygas' attack," flash across the screen as creepy sounds distort the music. The only way to beat him isn't through strength or strategy. It's by praying, literally appealing to hope and others for help. It kind of reminds me of It or something Stephen King would write. The fight ends with reality fracturing and fading out, It's overwhelming, abstract, and terrifying, especially given how grounded and fun the rest of the game was. Giygas doesn't defeat you physically, he makes you feel like the game itself is breaking. The shift from quirky RPG to fourth wall breaking existential horror lands this moment as one of the creepiest moments from any Nintendo game ever. Fatal Frame series. So this entry might be slightly cheating, but I'm throwing all of the Fatal Frame Nintendo exclusives into one entry. For those of you who don't know, the Fatal Frame series is known for being a pretty scary horror game franchise. But a few select entries made their way onto Nintendo platforms, and they did not tone anything down for the Nintendo vibe. Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse on the Wii and Fatal Frame Maiden of the Blackwater on the Wii U are the standouts, and bring both deeply disturbing content into the Nintendo catalog. In Fatal Frame, you explore cursed locations using an old camera to exorcise ghosts. But these aren't typical ghosts. They're trauma victims, murder victims, and corrupted souls that come with backstories of abuse, sacrifice, and suicide. Pretty dark stuff. You don't just fight them either. You confront their deaths, often reliving their last moments in painful detail. The game forces you to slowly watch them lurch towards you in full detail as you try to take their photo. Mask of the Lunar Eclipse leans into Japanese spiritual horror and haunting music, while Maiden of Blackwater uses the Wii U's gamepad as the literal camera, making the experience feel pretty immersive. These are mature, deeply unsettling games that feel completely out of place in Nintendo's otherwise family-friendly and nice catalog. Especially in an era where Nintendo didn't focus as much on external games outside their core ecosystem like they do now with the Switch and the upcoming Switch 2. As a matter of fact, these games were originally co-owned or distributed by Nintendo at one point, technically making these legitimate Nintendo games that should belong on this list. Luigi's Mansion Shadow Hanging. Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube is spooky but comedic. Cartoon ghosts, exaggerated jumps, and goofy sound effects. But one glitch discovered in the game's first release left players completely shaken. In one of the mansion's rooms, if lightning strikes at the right moment and you look at Luigi's shadow, you'll notice something terrifying. His shadow appears to be hanging in midair, almost as if he's being hanged by a noose. The shadow floats above the ground, right above Luigi himself, instead of being anchored to it. And because the lighting flashes so briefly, it's pretty easy to miss. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Nintendo never commented on whether this was intentional or not, but the visual is so specific that many players believed it was some kind of hidden message or dark Easter egg. It was eventually later discovered to be a lighting glitch, although you can't deny how much it looked like you-know-what, which made it extremely disturbing if you weren't prepared for that. It's one of the most iconic Nintendo horror stories and glitches of all time, and is an example of a glitch that accidentally became creepier than anything the developer could have ever planned for. It had this sudden moment and realization of, wait, has Luigi been dead this entire time? Giving these ghostly hints, and is way more disturbing than any ghost or battle that the game has for you. Undeniably up there as one of the creepiest Nintendo secrets, and it's a great way to end off this video. So if you guys enjoyed this, please subscribe and check out some of my other videos. And seriously, thank you all so much for your support. I can't believe we're already close to hitting 1,000 subscribers with only 10 videos. That's like insane. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.